Hey everyone, welcome to Behind the Minds. It's a volleyball podcast with Jordan Brooks, Tyler Simmons, and myself, Robbie Krause. Last episode, we got in a bit with team culture, how important it is. Today's episode is about the volleyball New Brunswick versus volleyball Nova Scotia, the differences and similarities of the whole way up, and what we think is best and what we would like to change. We'll pass along to Tyler here to recap last episode.
So last episode, we were just talking about team culture and how important it is for a coach to develop a team culture and make every player feel important. And then once you have every player feeling important, you have to get them to buy into what the team wants to do. A team that has good team culture will be really successful. Even if they're not the most skilled team or whatnot, a team that has good team culture can defeat a better team. Okay.
Yeah, that's very true. We got a lot of great responses from last episode as well. I'll kind of simplify this for people who may not know. We've all coached high school and club in Nova Scotia, and Jordan and I have coached provincial team New Brunswick. I coached college in New Brunswick. Jordan has coached high school in New Brunswick a bit, and also provincial team in Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of been around for two provinces to be this close. We've noticed a lot of similarities and differences. And yeah, we'll get Jordan to start off with what it's like coaching high school and club in New Brunswick and Fredericton.
Yeah. Well, when it was funny because when I first moved to New Brunswick, I actually hadn't even been to Fredericton before until my recruitment trip, which not a lot of people know. So it was it was interesting to when I moved there to, I learned about how things are done in New Brunswick. Like, for example, the school season being different time than the club. Our school season and club seasons are kind of switched. You don't even really realize it being a kid from Nova Scotia when you're younger, because you'll go to nationals and you'll still see those teams. So you kind of just assume it's the same. But at the same time, if I think back, while we were at Sackville High, we never played any New Brunswick high school teams. And now that I think back, I'm like, that's because they didn't exist. They weren't happening, right?
Because we'd play PEI teams, which were on the same schedule as Nova Scotia. From September to December, you'd have your high school and then club after. But yeah, never New Brunswick teams. We'd only see them in provincial team and stuff like that.
Maybe the odd tournament.
New Brunswick players until later. Looking back, I played against you and I didn't know their names. We only got the one opportunity in the summer.
Yeah.
How did you like coaching in that situation? Coaching.
You know what? It's funny because I think if I was a club coach here in New Brunswick, because I'm in Fredericton as we speak, I think it's honestly, I like that you get your team from September to May if you go to nationals.
You can get so much done.
4 months is great, but to have that extra 4 on top of that, your team, that's when you're really going to start seeing these results and these changes that you want to see. So for me, it'd be nice to have it. I wouldn't say I have a preference in how club is run either or. But it would be really nice to have a team for 8 months. That would be what I would say. And then on the school end, when I did ESA and helped with that with Natasha and Lynn, it's a short season, and it's not. The only thing is with that is it's not taken quite as serious, and it you don't practice very often. You don't you go in tournaments and stuff, but most athletes don't care near as much about their school season as their club. Whereas for us, because one happens and then it's over and then the other happens, you're pushing for high school, then you're pushing for club. You don't
same
have
week.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so, that 1 week turnaround from tryout period right after provincials are done.
It's the next day. First tryout.
Yeah. But the thing is, in New Brunswick, when they're in high school season, they still are getting ready for nationals, and that's always going to be the more important thing to them. So it's, I don't, you know what I mean? It's high school. The high school ball takes a hit because some players won't do both because their club team is all they really feel they need. And I think high school, the ball takes a little bit of a hit because of the fact that both are happening at the same time. And then you have some schools where none of their kids play club after December, and then they'll have a bit of an advantage because they have all their people there. And it just falls like, and nationals sometimes will fall on a weekend that your regional championships. That happens almost every year. Your regionals, like when we had ESA last year, and we were missing all our Reds girls because they went to nationals. So we had to win regionals to get into provincials without half our team. So it's like, and I mean, luckily we had a really strong group, but say Natasha decided to take the Spartans to nationals last year, we would have had nobody, right? So that's where I think it's like, it's really hard. I would say neither does things like, I don't even know if I could think of a perfect way to have it done. You know what I mean?
Do you think it would be more beneficial if the club seasons and high school seasons lined up, synced up more?
It'd be nice if they synced up, because I look at, like, with Mark, like, growing up and seeing Mark play at provincial team and a guy like that who's such a big deal. Yeah, Mark White. Yeah, or even like a Matt Logier or a Ryan Colpitz. These are guys that when you're a top player in your province, you'd love to compete against them.
Yeah.
But we don't have that much of that opportunity. I think now there's starting to be a little bit more of an interconnection where
there was a tournament this year. It was actually hosted at Mount A, but it was Tigers guys and Spartans guys team. They met up and each team broke into two teams, and they just played round robin tournaments. So that's great exposure for seeing people your own age who you only hear stories about if you don't cross over or you're not involved with VNS, VNB, or or any other program like that.
I think the Team Atlantic is a good opportunity for players.
That's a super cool thing. Yeah.
Because they're starting to get to know people early before university, right? So.
Yeah, well, you look at – it was funny because two girls from my ESA team that I helped coach made that, and then Tara and Talia were on it, so they got to meet Gabby and Brett, and like here's these two different groups of girls that I had just coached within a year, and they know each other when I see them at like a big tournament, and it's kind of cool to. And I mean, you end up playing university with these people, so you're meeting them before getting there, so you already have a relationship.
There was one picture that came out, and it had like a bunch of girls that played for the Canada Cup team for New Brunswick and a bunch from Nova Scotia, and it's just cool to see when you've coached in two different provinces. You kind of see those people now; they're all in one picture. It was kind of cool to see.
100%. Yeah.
So, doing your practicum at junior high? What's one thing you've noticed from junior high? Yeah, middle school. What's one thing you've noticed from middle school volleyball compared to New Brunswick compared to Nova Scotia?
Yeah, that's and I this is the one thing I'll say. Like, we're not doing this segment just to rip on one or say good things about the other, whatever. But one thing I will definitely say New Brunswick has a better grasp on is the grassroots programs, like the atomic volleyball, those are way more popular, and there's way more of those happening in New Brunswick. So as a result, by the time these kids, and another thing too, middle school's grade 6 to 8 here, and most junior highs in Nova Scotia are 7 to 9. So really in Nova Scotia, the first time you're going to play volleyball for just about anybody is grade 7. Yeah. Whereas in New Brunswick, you're a year behind middle school, and chances are those middle school kids have already played grassroots for 2 or 3 years, right? So, like even me, my dad coached volleyball, and I still only started in grade 7 because there was no other way for me to play.
Yeah, that was the first time.
My whole family played volleyball when I started in grade 7.
So on the middle school question, like when I did my practicum at George Street, and they were one of the top volleyball schools in New Brunswick, but like
their jerseys are pretty fly too. They just got a big G on them.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they're purple and gold. But when I went there, it was like volleyball meant something at that school. And don't get me wrong, it's a special, like it's a volleyball. It's a school that's good in all athletics, but the thing is, Middle School Cup is a tournament they have, and Robbie, you came out to it. It's literally like provincials for middle schools. So, like, can you imagine if we had that when we were in junior high, how amped we'd get? And that's the thing. Like,
I
they
would
have
have a
guys.
provincial title.
Buddy, that team? Oh, yeah.
We'll have to see. You guys were good, but, you know, it would have been a good game. But you know what I mean, though? Like, they had that to look forward to, and it's at the Coliseum, which is where provincials are and provincial team are. So they get this big sport court experience, because everybody knows that first sport court experience where all those courts are there and you just guys and girls all around. Yeah, you love it. And they get that in middle school, and we don't have, like, junior high ball in Nova Scotia. It's like a month and a half, and you only play your little, like, Sackville schools only play Sackville. Like, you know what I mean?
And,
until you go to a tournament.
In junior high, we went to PEI once, and then, well, actually, this is a club tournament, but it must have been 16U. There was this guy. He had a full case of root beer. He drank the whole trip. He had like 6 cans of pop. It's like, man, what are you doing?
It's not the same.
One thing I want to touch on a bit, Jordan, is how when I asked you earlier about it, how you said that kids set up nets at lunch and play volleyball in the school.
Yeah, man.
In Nova Scotia, like, you eat your lunch as fast as you can, then you go outside and shoot hoops on the outdoor nets, or you run to the gym and play inside. Yeah. So I think that's a big part too of just being like the king of the court.
That's a sports culture.
Yeah.
They're probably more.
And that's probably not a New Brunswick wide thing, but
no.
But the thing
that's
is,
why I wanted to ask you about George Street and how that was their like sport of choice at lunch.
That was what they want to play. Like, when it was like a free day where like you could play any sport, they're setting up volleyball nets still.
That's sweet. Because how many times have you gone just hit a ball against the wall? Because you don't want to set up net. There's not enough people.
Exactly. And at ESA, the French high school, which is also a junior high and an elementary, that's the exact same. Like, it's what you do. Like, when I coached at ESA, we'd be practicing and you'd have kids from the junior high team just sitting on the stage or like on the bleachers just watching us practice, or like, you know what I mean? Like, they'd have their practice after school and then they'd stick around in the gym to watch the next team. Like,
cool.
You know what I mean? Like, there's like 30 kids in the gym at all times just kind of floating. Or if like the other half of the gym's free, you'll see kids over there playing, even though they don't have an organized practice planned. Like, they're just, you know what I mean? Like,
getting reps in and small games.
Makes a big difference.
One thing we're going to touch on, Jordan and I were coaching this summer at the Easterns, and Tyler was there. He came to see us. And one thing Tyler said about VNS versus VNB, that Scotian players have more swag.
Yes.
That they carry themselves with a little bit more drip, you know?
Not the team we had last summer.
That's not what I'm saying. But
I agree.
It's the colors.
I agree.
It's the colors, I think. Man, the white and blue, they're nice. I like them.
I don't disagree there at all. Even when we're not as good, we're still walking like we are.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's a mentality thing too. But one other thing we're going to talk about is those 14U tryouts. So they were kind of held in like 3 different places over New Brunswick this summer. One of them was French as anything. So Jordan and I I'm doing a little better. Jordan and I showed up, and like, I know 0 French. I didn't know I needed to know French until I moved to Dieppe, and I'm like, what is everybody saying? The first time the lady at the liquor store asked me, like, oh, do you want a bag with that? And I looked like I saw a ghost. Just didn't know what she was saying.
Yeah,
but let's talk a bit about those experiences and how there's. Man, I think everybody in this town of Beresford was at the gym for these tryouts. They had moms, outside. Grandparents. Oh, my heavens.
Yeah, it was busy.
Yeah.
You know, it's different because, like, sometimes I feel like that French-English thing, like, there have been situations where clubs push to only have French players on their team, but there may be a strong English player that is in the area that they just refuse to take because of that, you know what I mean? So sometimes that, like, you can see a little bit of, you know, discrimination, maybe not the word I want to use, but like people want like all French team or an all English team, or you know what I mean? Or like they'll have it could be tough because if you're a coach that can't speak both languages, then
it'd be hard to get your points across.
Someone on your team is confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to do your best, like, and you don't want to embarrass them. And I think what happens too with kids is they're not going to tell you they don't understand. They're just going to be like, yeah, and they don't. Like, even like when you're in that atmosphere and like you don't feel comfortable asking those questions. But I mean, I think New Brunswick people are a little more used to that, dealing with that, whereas for us, that was our first kind of go at it. So we're like, whoa, like the tryout was in French.
Oh, like, the whole thing. And there's 14 U kids, and there was like 200 of them. It's like, how are you going to distinguish which one's better? They're all 14 years old. Like, this one's tall. Yeah, this one's left-handed.
They're all pretty short up there too. Where we were 5'1" average.
Yeah, there was
crazy defenders though.
Oh, fastest feet of anyone you'll ever meet.
Yeah, they were.
And that's one thing. We had a girl who was dominantly French on our team, and it took her a bit to come out and ask questions, but then she kind of understood, and then she was talking in English the whole time and trying stuff, and turned out to be one of her favorite kids. But
yeah, no, you got to make them feel comfortable, and
exactly.
Even, honestly, I was on the other end of it though, because like when I started doing ESA, that's a French high school, and I remember I went, and the athletic director, who was the gym teacher there, she was there for the first tryout, and like I was the one scared, like, because she was right there, and I didn't want to just only speak English, but I also wasn't very comfortable getting my point across in French, and like it was intimidating. So I kind of know what it would be like to be those kids with two English coaches when she's French, because you don't want, a lot of the things you want to share or say, you're too embarrassed to speak to say them, right?
Yeah.
So like it took me a while to get used to.
Right?
Yeah. And like for me, I was lucky because Natasha and Blynn, they would speak English to me, and they would they gave me that green light to just say what I wanted to say in English, because they knew that would be how I got my point across best. And really made me like, if I kind of said something in French, everyone would giggle at me, but it wasn't at me. It was just they just found it funny. Like it got to the point where I couldn't even try and speak it, because the girls were just laughing at everything I said. So, but it went from being like a embarrassed, like nervous, to more of a, like, it was the same with the player we had, Robbie. Like, we practiced up a bunch, because it turns into just like a fun thing, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. This question is going to be directed more towards Tyler, but as being a club and high school coach and trying to see the competition in New Brunswick, what are changes that you think would be that you'd want made, or that would be more beneficial?
As a high school coach?
Yeah.
Well, there's not much you can do as a high school coach, because our seasons don't add up. Like, I would just want to see the two, like, Nova Scotia and New Brunswick teams play against each other. If it's more in between that period of like when we're switching over from
kind of the first, so the end of New Brunswick club and the first of Nova Scotia.
Right then and there, like, I know, like, we tried to reach out to play some teams. I think we played. Who did we get to play again? No, we had some teams come down to our tournament. We had the Reds.
Yeah.
Was it Chargers came? Yeah. A couple PEI teams.
I'm asking because I want to do like a club tournament at Mount Allison next year, and kind of get it for both provinces, but both like male and female.
Yeah.
And kind of have it in a time that won't affect our season or the seasons that are ongoing, but to have it so that you get 4 groups of people who might not get the chance.
Yeah.
Even I think that Spartans tournament they had at Mount Allison, that's great, just to get like men's volleyball in that gym and high level volleyball.
Yeah.
The only issue I see with that is with high school in Nova Scotia, isn't there days that you can't travel days or something like that?
You can't travel.
Well, it's hard to go out of province. Yeah. And you're not allowed to go to New Brunswick. Like if we wanted to, we couldn't go up and play in a club tournament with our high school team.
No.
even though it's the same time, they won't let you do it. So
Yeah.
It kind of sucks in that. I actually have a question for you two as two university college coaches. What do you think? Which province do you think it's easier to recruit their players? And when I ask that question, because I look at New Brunswick, they have provincials and it's all in this one gym. Nova Scotia has the same, but Nova Scotia's are a little later on in the year when a lot of people would have made the decisions. So where do you find it's easier to find an event to go to in New Brunswick to find their good players, or would it, you know what I mean? Like, what are your thoughts?
I would say that. I kind of talked to you today about it. I sent him a text saying I missed seeing this middle play before she already committed. And she was from Nova Scotia, but because I wasn't able to go to like the high school tournaments as much as I would like, next year I'm going to, but I was able to see more of New Brunswick. And having like kind of my foot in the door with New Brunswick, I was able to kind of, see who are going to be players that are coming up in the province. And I think I have to do a better job with the Nova Scotia ones. And that's why I was helping out before this COVID took over, helping out with the Sonics team so that I could kind of see who's who in grade 11 and kind of feel out the grade 12s that haven't fully committed, have had feelers and stuff like that.
For me, I'd say with Nova Scotia, you have some players that you won't even get to see during school season because sometimes it could be in Div 2 or not playing at a school that has a team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's that first half of the season is, as a coach, that's when I want to be finding players.
Oh, for sure.
At the end of the season, kids already kind of know where they want to go and they're kind of panicking. So if you can get a player at the end of the season, good, but you're recruiting at the beginning. So when I go to New Brunswick, because I went to a couple New Brunswick tournaments last year, I think it was in the Coliseum.
Yeah.
I think it was provincials.
Yeah.
And I got to see a lot of players, and they have a ton of teams. Some teams from northern New Brunswick that I would never see. Right?
But they're there.
Yeah. So everyone's there, so I get to see them. But for me as a high school coach, also I get to see players play in their high school teams. Right? And then you get to see them again playing club with a different team, and you can see how they adjust and adapt to the new teammates and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. One thing I would say, you talk about divisions in New Brunswick, they're provincials. Division 1, they go by AAA, AA, but it's all because when I went with ESA, it was cool because they do it all together.
Yeah.
So you can go to provincials for school volleyball for New Brunswick, and you'll see all the kids in each division. Now, mind you, if their team didn't make provincials, then they're not there, but that's a tournament where you can, and I remember, Mr. Pleasant was there, Dad went there, I think Lauren Miller might have been there before she switched up, but anyway,
I was there.
I watched the webcast. I was talking to Moffat on the webcast. The provincials high school?
Oh, yeah.
High school provincials I'm talking.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, New Brunswick, their high school provincials, if you came out to our provincials for CPA this year, you're going to
they're in Cape Breton to start.
That was part of the problem. But you're going to see a lot of talent, but there's so much talent that's not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether their school team doesn't make it, whether they don't play on a Division I school team, and that's just based on population. That's not the kids' fault. So I think that one thing about New Brunswick, also with the Coliseum, that tournament happens so early that you can go to their provincials, and most of those kids still haven't committed anywheres yet.
Yeah.
People have questions they want us to answer. Feel free to send a message in at the beginning of the next session, even if it's about the topic from before. We could take 5 to 10 minutes to kind of recap and get some, because I feel like people always ask, I'll see a comment or something, and I'm like, it'd be nice if we could answer that for the person. Yeah. So feel free to kind of ask us some questions because
answer segment.
Yeah, it's true. We could have a whole episode like that.
We're going to talk a little bit about a little more on clubs in Nova Scotia and clubs in New Brunswick, how clubs in the trial period's done in Nova Scotia versus New Brunswick. Jordan, we'll get you to kind of talk a bit about the New Brunswick to start off, and then we'll all chime in on the Nova Scotia.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for me, it seemed like the thing about New Brunswick is because it's like there's not as many people there. So even though it's a bigger area, less people. So most of the cities, they only have the bodies it's easy. Like it'd be like in Truro, where you just know who your team is. It's the same group of kids play together. Like that's what it's going to be like in Edmundston. That's what it's going to be like in most of the cities. Really, the only place that you're going to see
also shout out Danny from Edmundston.
Good call. God bless him. Francis effort. But like the only real cities you're going to see like what we have to deal with in Metro, where club is like a decision and whatever, is really Moncton and in Fredericton, because St. John had a little bit of that. They had two clubs, but they actually brought them together to make one called the Timberwolves, which I think was a good thing because St. John just doesn't have enough athletes to compete with Fredericton or Moncton if they split their kids up. So the way they do things is, their club season starts September-ish, but they don't really have a tryout period right now. It's kind of like, just you can kind of start whenever. So the only issue with that is, let's say I run a club, let's say Sonics existed in Fredericton. If I can get gym time in August, I can start my tryouts and get everyone out to mine earlier than all the others. You know what I mean? So
when do players have to decide for that?
There really isn't like a time. Like that stuff doesn't, there's a registration deadline, but as long as you make that, which would probably be in like October, right? So It's different. It's not like this 2 weeks you have to, like, it's just literally like, make sure you have a team. Like, so for example, I know there's issues sometimes because one club will manage to get their 3 tryouts in, before the other clubs even had one. Whereas for us, if you don't do it early, that's your fault because you have 2 weeks to do it. So you got to get it done. But you know what I mean?
So stressful times, those 2 weeks in Nova Scotia. For players.
Well, it's right after. It's like provincials, and then the next day is like the first tryout.
Yeah, and it's a big it's a quick turnaround.
Yeah, it is. And for kids in New Brunswick that may be watching that don't know the process, any kids in Halifax, they go to as many tryouts, and if they receive a letter, they can either commit to that team or
pick another one.
Yeah, or pick another one. Returners can get a letter early. Correct?
Yeah. If they're from last year,
Yeah. And it's kind of a stressful time. Kids can kind of say, "Oh, I want to play with you," and pick a team depending on the coaches.
Well, what I feel like, it doesn't feel like it's tryouts for the players. It feel like it's tryouts for the coaches.
For the coach,
where the kids are going to see, like, hey, do I like these coaches or not? Which works in our favor because kids like playing for us and stuff. But like, it doesn't feel like you're supposed to be impressing me with your volleyball skills.
No, it's the opposite. You're trying to make them love it so that they'll play for you. And also, they look around the gym.
That's the main one.
Who they see there too makes a huge difference, right? So it's if you get a lot of kids at your tryouts, then they're like, oh man, everyone was here like this, and then so it really does turn into a coaches selling themselves.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah. Well, I mean, it works out for some of us.
And at the same time, too, like, I think New Brunswick could use a little bit of a structure so that they don't have teams getting, like, so that it kind of defeats the whole getting gym times, because then it's just who can get a gym time faster.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Because principal or someone in your club.
So it'd be nice if they had that, but at the same time, they don't seem to have too many issues here with like, like the only thing with the trial period is in Nova Scotia is you don't know who you have. So you'll offer
until that last day. Yeah.
Say you offer 12 spots and only 3 of them say yes, then you've got a 3-player team, and then it's like, then you're scrounging for others.
Yeah,
so
trying to find anybody.
More teams get dissolved in Nova Scotia because they don't have people that commit to those letters.
The one thing the only thing that I really don't like about it is for players who are at the bubble players who don't get letters, and they're just like they're waiting to find out, not if they're playing, like to find out if they're even going to be able to play volleyball. Like, not, oh, what team I'm going to play for. It's like, maybe no team wants me, so I cannot play volleyball this year. Right?
Yeah, it's rough. It's easy for the strong players who can play wherever they want, because they just go to as many tryouts as they feel like trying out for, and then they just pick. But what if you're one that it's
your first year?
Yeah, we don't know who you are, or say, like, there's a lot of players who coaches want, but they only want them if this and this and this person decline.
So you don't want like 5 left sides, right? So you have
you like that kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes very difficult. But I think, too, the thing is with Halifax, because it's such a highly populated spot, there's no way, like, we can't have 2 clubs in our city. It's way too big for that.
That would be ridiculous.
Whereas in Fredericton, they can get away with 2 or 3, Moncton 2 or 3, and it's fine. But it's really, that's one of those things where it's like, I just don't know.
I don't have the answer. So I don't want to say that. I don't want to say it's broken. I don't want to say it's great, because I don't have the answers.
No. It's really tough. Like, it is. And
it's stressful on the players and the coaches.
It is. And I do feel bad for the players sometimes, because, like, there are kids who commit to their teams. Like, say they played for us last year, and then they commit to us the following year early. They take that early offer, and then they end up realizing that we only have 6 girls, and then they don't have anywhere to play. And but because they decided to go back to their team, they're screwed, because they assumed that team was going to exist, and now it's not, right? And we saw that situation with a lot of our girls, right?
Well, my Sonics team last year, that happened to us. We had 1 kid commit to us. We had 1 kid on the deadline day, and we're like, it doesn't look like we're going to have a team. And then by the end of it, I think we ended up getting 6 players, and then we got a 7th player, an 8th player, I think, to come in or something like that, because one of her friends wanted to play, and we lucked out getting a team, just having a team that year, right?
Yeah, it's pretty risky. Like, I don't know. I really don't know a way to fix that or what you could do, but I know that there's talk a lot. It's something that's discussed, and I know here in New Brunswick they talk about a lot of different things that like they want to try some of the stuff that Nova Scotia is doing. The one thing I think they should try, in my opinion, is the Super Series. I think because in New Brunswick, all you have to do is go in an east or north and a south tournament, or east and west. I forget what it is, but so, like, you just have to go in one in this area and one in like this area. So, for example,
to be eligible
for provincials. So let's say I've signed up our Sonics team, if we lived in New Brunswick, in these 2 week tournaments, right?
Yeah.
We come first in both. We're going to go in ranked first, even though, say, the Reds played in hard ones with all the good teams. They came second once, first once. They're way better than us, but since we've got 2 first places, we're ranked first.
I think Super Series was a great thing.
Super Series forces the top teams to be in provincials, and if you don't perform, you don't perform. There's things that could be fixed about it, but
the thing I like about Super Series is, like, where you end up before provincials is probably where you should be. Like, if you are a tier 2 team, you've already played in the tier 1 tournament and showed that, like, okay, maybe we're not as good as we want it to be at this moment. We have to go to tier 2 to play, right? And if you are a tier 1 team, like, you've had to earn it to be there. So it's not simply, even if you're the best team, it's not simply we go to provincials. You have to compete and do well in every Super Series to get to the provincials.
And one thing I'll say, just for those who might not know, so Super Series is just, the way they do it is it's an 8-team tournament, and it's kind of like tier 1 provincials, but they have multiple of them. So 8 teams are invited at the beginning of the year based on results from prior years.
From the last year,
Yeah. So you've got 8 teams, and then the bottom 2 move down out of it, and then they have 2 tier 2 tournaments, and each winner joins the following Super Series. So then they have 3 of those. So pretty much the 4th Super Series is more or less provincials. So it gives you a couple tournaments of an opportunity to get up into the top 8 to prove that you deserve to be there and that you should be in Tier 1 provincials. Whereas in New Brunswick, they don't have tiered provincials. Every team is in one massive tournament. Yeah. So it's like 24 teams in this big tournament, and you got to win your pool out, and then they narrow it down to 8 for quarterfinals. So I think that's something New Brunswick could take on, and I think that would benefit them. Because what happens is, with Super Series, if you're a top team, you're only getting competition with teams that are good and deserve. You know what I mean? You're getting good competition. Yeah. You're not having to play all these weaker teams. It allows those top teams to play each other. Whereas here in New Brunswick, it's a lot harder. Like, even at provincials, sometimes teams aren't getting a challenge till the semifinals.
Yeah.
So whereas for us, you're all 8 teams you're playing have earned their keep to. There's a reason they're there.
That's like my Sonics team last year. Jordan was in New Brunswick, so he wasn't coaching with me. We played in Tier 1 for most of the year, and then I think it was the third Super Series we lost, and then we went to Tier 2 provincials, and we won Tier 2 provincials. I think that was the right place for our team, because we were good enough to be in Tier 1, but we weren't good enough to compete in Tier 1. And then we went to Tier 2, and we were good enough to compete in Tier 2. And it wasn't a walk. Like, the teams that were around us were equally as matched as us, right?
Yeah, for sure. One thing I think, and that's one thing I think New Brunswick should take on that Nova Scotia does. But then with the trial period, I'm like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, sure, maybe you've got a team that's having their tryouts a little earlier than everybody else, but it doesn't seem like that's becoming an issue. So maybe they should probably stay away from this trial period until they feel they need something new, right? So
I think if Nova Scotia had more time for their trial period, that could be better. But it's like literally provincial hits. Like, you have high school provincials, and it's like the next day. Start. It's kind of stressful. But it's the only way they can do it, right? Like,
because they want to get that stuff done before January so that you can get things started right away. Yeah. Well, I will ask you guys just as, because I've kind of lived it both, and where do you think do you find there's a difference from what you see at the younger ages when you compare the two provinces, at the younger ages or at the older ages? Like, do you think one has more success at one point than the other? Or, and, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious as to your opinion on, like, the level of ball.
So the only time I really get to see both teams, or New Brunswick and Nova Scotia at the same time, is when I see, like, the Reds come up and play against our Sonics team or the Tigers, or same thing with the Spartans. And they've already had four months of their season in. So when I see them, they're already in their system. They're running like a nice, good offense, and we're like week 2 starting our system. So, like, they're already ahead of us. So it's hard to really tell how much better or worse we are, because they're 4 months into their season. The really only the time you'd be able to tell would be at the end. They would still have 8 months where we would have 4.
I think you notice it in younger ages a little more. I just think in New Brunswick, there's a lot more people playing from a younger age. And then, like, Jordan and I coached.
That could help technical development.
Yeah, technically. Like, Jordan and I coached 15U in the summer, and the other New Brunswick 1 team finished first, and we finished second.
Yeah, we both placed to get ahead of the Nova Scotia teams.
But I think that gap grows, and I think high school volleyball in Nova Scotia is better. That's just my opinion.
It is. There's more good teams. Yeah, 100%.
So, question: with you coaching in New Brunswick, has there been many players who've been goofy-footed? Just because if they're starting teaching volleyball at such a young age, that could be something that they. Not as many because it's being developed that early.
I don't see it as often as what you'd see it in Nova Scotia. No.
Okay.
No. I feel like that's something that there's been more time, or more people have seen that person by the time they're in high school. Like, by the time you're in high school in New Brunswick, you've probably had like 6 different coaches. Whereas by the time you're in high school in Nova Scotia, you could maybe only have had 2 or 3. So I think that's something. It's kind of funny because like I think if Nova Scotia could like the middle school cup that they have, like if they had something like that to give kids something to look forward to, it would take a lot of years. I don't think it would be a hit right off the bat.
The Dow tournament, when they had the junior high section for the Dow tournament, that was kind of big.
That was the closest thing, yeah. But even that's kind of died off, it seems.
And that's Thanksgiving. So
yeah.
It's your second week of October. So you don't get
like it's definitely like I don't think one province has better volleyball than the other. I think it switches all the time, to be honest with
different.
you. The one thing I will say is that in New Brunswick, those teams you're playing have played with each other for years, and there might be 1, 2, 3 kids change, but that group has been together for a long time, no matter the club, Reds, Spartans, even in the bigger cities. Whereas in Nova Scotia, school ball, you've got the same team because you're at the school with them. But in club, half your team this is the first time you've played with them, other than in the summer or something. So that's the one thing I think New Brunswick seems to have more of a. We spend half of our seasons bringing teams together and teaching them to gel and to get along and whatever.
It's a shorter season at that point too.
Yeah.
So you spend half of the shorter season trying to get them to not be awkward.
Yeah.
There's definitely less switching of clubs. Now there's less options, but there's even with the fact that there's less options, like you don't see it very often. And I think that allows teams to get to play more like a team easier. And then when they start in September, it's like, hey, this is right where we left off.
Yeah.
Like next year with our club team, we had 5 grade 11s, and say we coached it again and they all came back, that'd be great. But in Nova Scotia, the chances of you having that happen are much less likely. So then you're having, even though say we got 2 of those girls back, you're having to teach the other 10 how we do things. Whereas for Jeff, maybe this year, he didn't have to do, everyone came, like his Reds team, it was like, hey, welcome back, everybody. You know what I mean? Like it was more of a welcome back, not, hey, my name's Jordan. Yeah. This is Robbie. This is Tyler. We're nice guys. Don't be afraid of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we spend a month just trying to get the kids to talk.
Yeah.
It takes, and it's fun. It's fun. And I think we do a really good job at that. But imagine if we just got to just get right to it.
Taking like our CPA team all year.
For sure.
Yeah.
It'd be cool.
At Mount A, and you guys played against the 18U Reds team in September at the little tournament we had at Mount A.
Yeah.
But that team, they were a little rusty and stuff, but you could tell they all knew the system.
Yeah, technically they were rusty, but mentally they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and you could, I think that's very beneficial for club teams to be very familiar and have that time.
And I mean, if you look at it, like, yes, like the Reds won every tournament that when the 2 provinces combined, they were winning everything because not only did they
were ahead of schedule.
They had the 4 months ahead of us. But the one thing is, we're also like, look at our tournament. It was the end of January. So we were about 3 weeks into our season. They were 4 months and 3 weeks, but that's like the first time they all get back together after Christmas.
Yeah.
So there is some rust there for them, but they still win. And don't get me wrong, that's a talented group. Yeah. But that team has been the same since they were, like, I remember that group in 16U, and there was 2 or 3 different kids. So
we were teaching our team a whole new like blocking system and schemes, defensive stuff that like you can't just snap your fingers and change it. That takes a while.
And in New Brunswick too, one thing I like is like I don't find you see like for the Reds club, and I love that the Reds does this. Like there's a 14U coach. There's a 15U coach.
Yeah.
There's a 16U coach. And that is it. You coach them the one season, and then best of luck to you.
We talked about that before. Yeah. So I said it should be like it should be like the school season, right? Like, or not school season, like school. When you're in school, your primary teacher doesn't move up to grade 1 with you. They stay in primary while you move up the grades, right? Because
Yeah.
Coaches have things to teach you in that way. Like you can have a system where like I know that my, let's say 14-year-olds are learning this from Robbie, and then they move up to U15 with me and they learn that, and then they move up to U16 and they learn something from you, but we know it's a system. I like that because that's how our kids learn in everyday life from school.
Like,
so
you don't expect your kindergarten teacher to be teaching bio 12.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. And I also think and I think that most New Brunswick clubs, there you see more of that than what you're going to see with us. Like, and I get why people like to move up with their kids because we don't
you
get
get to
them
grow
for
with
long
them.
enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, you got to ask yourself, like, if we did things the way, and I think I really do like how, like, with Maggie, she going through the Reds club, like, she had this guy, then she had this guy, then she had this woman, then she had this guy. So did her older sister. They go through the exact same, like,
Stages. Yeah.
yeah, except it's just 1 year later. Okay, now
Yeah.
you had her in 16U, now it's my turn to have her. And I don't know, it seems to, that's obviously it's not something you see as often in Nova Scotia, and it's something that I wonder how much better we would do if we had that.
One thing I noticed about Nova Scotia and junior high volleyball is that some of the junior high coaches might not have ever played volleyball before. Like, and most of the time it is just a teacher because they're trying to fill the role, because we know sometimes there's a shortage of coaches in Nova Scotia, especially in a junior high setting. And like at that moment, kids could be learning bad habits in junior high and you can't blame the teacher. They're just doing their job, trying to help out these kids playing volleyball. But that could be a reason why some of these kids could learn bad technique and technical stuff in junior high, learning from a coach that never played the game.
And you'll see that in New Brunswick too, but less. There are some there are a few junior highs in Nova Scotia that have their volleyball coach is someone who like does that year round.
Yeah.
There's almost none. Whereas in New Brunswick, like if I'm at the middle school cup, like Dan McMorrin's got his son, like my university coach. You look around the gym, there's a lot of faces. Like people there's full-time coaches that do it year round that are taking on middle school teams. No one takes on middle school teams here.
Yeah.
Like even I'm guilty of it myself. Like I haven't ever taken the time to give back to that younger age and try and build up.
I want to. I just don't have time to do it.
One thing I think, not a lot of club coaches coach high school as well.
No. If I think about it, it was us and Lockview.
Yeah.
Dave.
Were the only. Yeah.
That's really
Yeah, it's only the two.
Barrett doesn't coach high school.
No, few do both.
Gary kind of does both.
Yeah, there aren't
Carrie
many.
Peck?
Carrie Peck does.
She didn't coach.
She did. CEC too.
Oh, CEC too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she did a club team.
It's tough and it's a big time commitment.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts on the VNS VNB? We were originally going to do it a 2-part episode, but I think our next episode is going to be a full one by itself.
Yeah, we ended up getting in. I figured it might be a topic.
Yeah.
It's a never-ending one.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys want to wrap up with for the VNB VNS?
You guys go first.
No, so you guys are just going to throw it on me, eh?
I'll go first. I like answering my own questions. Yeah, I think the grassroots program in New Brunswick and just getting kids touching, I think that's huge. And again with Tyler, I agree with the Nova Scotia drip. I think it's the colors, man. I don't know, the green and aren't.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly.
The blue and white is nice,
Yeah.
but that's because they're from Nova Scotia.
That's because we're all Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'd like to see a lot more like playing against each other at the younger ages and stuff like that. So I remember when I was in junior high, I got to go to PEI, and it was my first time seeing a spin serve, like playing against a spin serve. I seen my brother's like friends do it, but I was in grade 7.
When we were doing provincial teams, we would have the beach part too. So that was another time where you'd see New Brunswick.
Oh yeah.
As well, and you'd be like, man, who are those guys? Or this team's
Yeah.
good.
I was thinking
but I was still only at provincial team,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
I was thinking too that'll be a good segment too to get kind of on the beach topic as well at some point.
Yeah.
But
we
no,
could even get a couple beach guests to come on and talk. Two of our close friends representing Canada.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Hillary Burnett. Ideas, so.
Yeah, no, I think for me, just like summing it up, like I think it would be, it's harder to get gym time in Halifax, and I think in New Brunswick it's a little easier to access that stuff, even in a place like Fredericton. I think maybe that's part of why the grassroots thing is a little easier to have happen in New Brunswick, because they have that access to the gyms. But if I was to give advice to Nova Scotia, or just even to me, being a coach coming from there, it's that more of the coaches that know what they're doing need to give to the younger ages, because you're seeing that way more often in New Brunswick. And then that base just stays with those athletes forever, and they're so much better for it. That would be one thing. With New Brunswick, I think it would be nice if they had some more structure as to how their provincial team, like, I don't think provincial should be a 24-team thing. I think there should be a tier 1 with the top 8 and then the rest play. I think Super Series would be a good idea. And then for school ball, like, it would be really nice if there was a way to make school ball more of a thing for, like, New Brunswick, and something that they're more excited about. And like some kids, like, it means really nothing. It's just something they'll just do just to do it. And a lot of them decline it. Like, I know Maggie, some of her years she played, some she didn't, just depending on who the team was. It'd be nice, because, I mean, think about our battles in high school. Like, it's honestly, it's almost, I wouldn't say it's more fun. And I know, Tyler, you didn't go to as strong of a school as what we did, but, like,
we still had battles.
Yeah, you fight. Like, it's fun to compete for your school.
If you look at me in grade 10, we had 4 ACAA athletes, volleyball players, on their Division II team, and then didn't have a team in grade 11. In grade 12, I switched to CEC for volleyball. I moved back to my other school.
People do that all the time.
Yeah, you don't see that in New Brunswick because of the importance of how dominant club is versus high school.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would say is, like, I don't know how they can make that work, but trying to make sure that the regionals is not the same weekend as nationals, like, you should try and do your best to make it so that those things don't cross over. There needs to be some sort of discussion between the two. I will say on that note, being a provincial champion both in the high school league in New Brunswick and in Nova Scotia, I think that it's not to say that the, like, our ESA team that we had, I mean, they would have beaten our CPA team that we had this past year. It's not to say that the high school ball in New Brunswick can't be good, but it's always going to take a little bit of a hit if that club is kind of getting in the way. And coaches are, some coaches don't even let their kids play school if they want to play for their club. So it shouldn't be something that a kid can't do. Like, representing your school is an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Well, that's episode 4. PEI, we did not forget about you. We'll have another little segment for you. Thanks for tuning in. Check out our episode 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, when I'm quiet.
And subscribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm quiet, I'm thinking of something.
Like and subscribe, please.